Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Index Office Hours. Today is the 24th of June, and this is Index Office Hours 213. Welcome, everyone. So for anyone who is new to Index Office Hours, this is the town square where graph ecosystem participants come together and discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexers. You know what I'm going to say next? This is my famous saying. This is a conversation and we do love participation, so please do get involved in today's conversation via voice or text. We have quite a few topics which are going to be quite engaging and would love your input on. So yeah, get involved in the conversation and do let me know if you're having any challenges with your microphone. Just as a reminder, this session is going to be recorded and posted onto public channels like YouTube. So if you are concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. And with that, let's get into today's episode. Thanks for posting the agenda there, Juan. I'm going to swiftly hand off to Carlos for our regularly scheduled repo watch section.
I think Carlos is having some audio issues on his end, so I can probably do Protocol Watch first.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do that. I must have missed that. Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay, I hope it's not too high again now. For Protocol Watch, we have forum governance first. There are some updates on the GIP 0084, the chain deprecation process. Then forum research, we don't have any new updates. And the contracts repository, we only have a few fixes to the indexing agreements, I think, if I'm not mistaken, which is adding indexing agreements collect, adding some testing, remove payment type, and a few chores like moving all of the interface to a dedicated package. Then for the network subgraphs, we don't have any new updates, but I do have a small update on my side. We are looking into an issue on the L1 network subgraph. I know it's not very used since we moved to L2, but technically it's not deprecated, so we will be fixing it soon. We just had some timing issues to working on the fix itself. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, well, it seems Carlos is still having some issues with the audio on his side. I don't know if Kate's around or anyone from the PACA team to take us into Project Watch.
Yes, there is a PACA in the building.
Awesome, sounds good.
So again, you did mention the GIP for the chain deprecation process. I'm going to put it here in the chat one more time. It is open for public comment until the 25th, or tomorrow. So thanks for all the comments you've made so far. I hope that we've been able to address any questions or anything that's unclear within the process. When it comes to the CIP, we're nearly complete with our POI investigation. We located some changes that were made with the JSON RPC schema that removed certain fields like total block difficulty, and certain clients have updated to that, like Aragon, but certain clients like Geth have not. And so with our testing that hones in on the metadata of different blocks, we were able to locate that. And we also we were able to find some solutions for some backward compatibility if that's needed, depending on what client you're using. So we're working on getting a little bit more concise with those results and finalizing everything before we share it with the community. So thanks for everybody who contributed their POI data for us as well to be able to analyze with all the different endpoints that we also have as well. Matthew's typing something, so maybe. Some of the subgraphs that we use are blocks deployment subgraphs. Matthew, you've seen blocks deployments is usually a big point of contention. So just for more context, the way that we test in the CIP process is we have different subgraphs. It depends. Probably, yes, maybe Urian, you want to... I don't think it's going to cause real issues, but it could, because different clients look for it and other ones don't. So it did cause issues with our testing. But yeah, we use different kinds of subgraphs to locate different kinds of potential issues. Some subgraphs that look at like the parity tracing API and different tracing mechanisms, and some groups of subgraphs that catch all the metadata of a block to make sure that it's matching. So I don't think it'll be too much of an issue.
I think the challenge here is that the SEO do not differentiate between subgraphs that are using the total block difficulty or not. So you're right that it is not being used in a lot of subgraphs, but the sheer reason that it's just that it exists is enough that we could distribute indexing rewards to subgraphs that do not have a convergent POI. So it's something that we should be very explicit about when we enable support for these networks, that for arbitration to work, you will need to use subgraphs that are not using this feature. So if not, we can't really slash people for deploying subgraphs that, or for indexing subgraphs that will have different POIs depending on the client. So I think it's just the way that we are very direct about the messaging there, and that it's clearly stated in our docs that these networks do not have a total difficulty, or you cannot use total difficulty on these networks. So maybe that should be on the total difficulty, like the part where we write about that in the docs, if that makes sense.
Yes, like I said, we want to give clear guidance, and there are some. We found just with my digging through a bunch of different repos, I was able to find some issues related to that and what people were doing to work around that. And so we'll definitely want to put that in our documentation, and we can share that with the indexer community. Regardless of that, outside of the POI investigation, we're nearly complete with our testing for Berachain and looking to move that into governance closer to next month. Yeah, developers need to know as well. Yeah, so we'll make sure that we communicate that. But yeah, there's not a uniform consensus among execution clients whether or not they want to keep these certain things or support these certain things. So we're able to hone in on that. So if you have any other questions, let me know.
All right, I see Matthew's typing, so there may be a follow-up here. Oh, he stopped typing. Okay. Well, I'll let you guys continue chatting in the chat there if there is any follow-ups. But I think we're gonna swing it back to Juan for Repo Watch, because I think Carlos is still having audio issues, right? But do correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
I am able.
Okay.
I will be taking
okay.
Repo Watch from here. And sorry for the issues. Okay, hello everyone. And so for this week, there's actually a pressing update you need to do if you're running Polygon Amoy network, so the testnet for Polygon. Today you need to update AIMDAL to version 1.6.0 beta. As in a few hours it will be rolling out AIMDAL v2. And paired with that, there's also a new Aragon version that supports, in case you're running Aragon 3 for the testnet for Polygon, there's a new Aragon version supporting that, which is 3.0.8. So today, update those for Amoy. And there's also a patch version for Arbitrum Nitro, 3.6.7. Seems to be regular churn. Nothing really stood out for me, but it's always good to update. And those are all of the execution inconsistent layer clients for this week. GraphStack, so no releases as well. And on Launchpad, we have updated charts for ProxyD, Nimbus, Graph Network Indexer, Aragon, and Arbitrum Nitro. And that's all for this week.
Awesome. We've got a comment here from Matthew in the chat saying also update to Aragon from yesterday and 𝗀𝗃 from 10 hours ago and 𝗨𝗀𝗃 from 1 hour ago.
Yeah, the Aragon one is 308, right, Matthew? If there's one from 1 hour ago, then I missed that one because I prepared this in the morning. So yeah, sometimes we miss the releases. Yes, Kate, how dare me? I will. It's gotta be a rolling release kind of thing. Thanks, Matthew.
Amazing. Sounds like Carlos covered everything except 𝗨𝗀𝗃s, but yeah, we've covered that as well. Okay, so I'll also add if you were synced on the ETH mainnet previous to v3.0.7, you might want to check your nodes. If you were receiving null responses, you should resync with the latest version. That's a good shout from Vince there. So important to have a look there if you guys are experiencing that. Is anyone experiencing what he's describing there about null responses?
I'll just add to this. So it seems like it
Yeah.
affected a lot of people because a bunch of providers on DRPC had their nodes turned off for providing service on ETH due to this issue. So I would imagine there are a lot of people that are affected.
Got it. So that's a pretty useful update there. Seems like there's a follow-up question from Matthew saying, does GraphNode check for these for things like this? Does anyone know? Probably not. Anyone on the GraphNode team? Not sure, but let me find out. Nikki seems like she's going to get onto that, and then a few other people are typing as well. Could GraphNode check for things like this? And then a question from Jim, sorry, to Vince, saying any version prior to 308. That's for you, Vince. See, Vince is typing. Okay, we'll let that chat continue in the chat box there. But yeah, do appreciate you flagging that. That's pretty important. And thanks, Mickey, for hopping on to that question there, and hopefully there's a response there that that could be useful for Matthew. Okay, so today is going to be quite focused on Edgenode. We have the good fortune of having two folks from Edgenode today. Two different topics. One is about IPFS. And a lot of infrastructural changes that are happening, which 𝗨𝗏𝗀 is going to be joining us to discuss. And then Theo will be hosting a discussion on the QoS subgraph as well. So first I'm going to hand it over to 𝗨𝗏𝗀. So without further ado, feel free to take the mic and share your screen. Yeah, we can see the screen.
Thanks. I hope.
Oh, yeah, 𝗨𝗏𝗀. I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Audio seems to be coming in and out. Is there anything that we could do about that? Maybe if it's a connection issue or microphone issue, I'm not sure. It was working just fine as when we tested it today.
Is this working better now?
Yes, fantastic. Okay, yeah, great. Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Yes. So I hope you heard the introduction. If not, I can repeat briefly. So I'm going to talk today about some infrastructure changes that we have undertaken in the last couple of weeks. On June 9th, we've launched a new IPFS solution located at https ipfsthegraph.com. This is our new canonical URL for all IPFS requests. This affects both the 𝗀𝗲 𝗟𝗶𝗀 endpoints for uploading files, so subgraphs, and also for retrieving subgraphs through IPFS via the IPFS gateway URL. So the new canonical domain is ipfs.graph.com, and that is without any path suffix. So previously we have had various different heterogeneous versions of this in our documentation, some with a path prefix, IPFS, some also with different subdomains. We've had IPFS testnet.graph.com, we've had IPFS network.graph.com, and also some other less widely known versions of this. So yeah, it's important in the future. For the time being, we still have backwards compatibility, but going forward, please update it to only point to HTTPS ipfs.graph.com, no path prefix, nothing there. The way the graph node works, for instance, is it actually detects what kind of endpoint you are giving it. It tries basically both 𝗀𝗲 𝗟𝗶𝗀 and the IPFS gateway version. And if there's an IPFS gateway version, it will actually prefer that. But yes, this domain actually supports both of these request formats. Yeah, and certainly don't provide like the 𝗀𝗲 𝗟𝗶𝗀 path suffix in its entirety on top of that subdomain. So yeah, really just ipfs.graph.com without any other path components. Right, so yeah, please migrate whenever you can at your next convenience. We've already updated all of the documentation to only refer to this canonical domain. But for the foreseeable future, we don't even have a date yet for the full deprecation of this. I'm going to confirm what kind of date we want to set for that. But for the time being, we are monitoring the usage. There's still some sizable number of requests coming to the old URLs and also to the old path prefixes. We are trying our best, and I think that we are currently covering all legacy routes to rewrite all requests coming to alternative legacy domains and also to alternative legacy paths, and rewriting those to the canonical paths. That includes also some fringe path prefixes like double IPFS prefix and so on. But for the sake of more efficient caching and request deduplication, it's beneficial if we can at some point all agree on that one canonical domain and deprecate and close down all of those rewriting routes in the future. So why have we done that? So this might come as a surprise, but there were some instability concerns on our side. This is obviously a lighthearted joke. I'm sure you've noticed that over the course of the last month in particular, the performance of the IPFS nodes that we have been hosting internally has not been living up to the standards and the expectations that we set for ourselves. And I'm sure that there was also plenty of frustration on the side of the indexer community with frequent or more frequent downtimes recently. But there's also just operational complexity involved here. I don't want to defend that kind of quality of service that we have kind of like provided for those IPFS nodes, but it's no easy feat to maintain and operate an IPFS infrastructure at scale. There's just the point of, without throwing any shade, obviously, like we're all software engineers, so that would be in bad taste, but IPFS code quality is problematic in some cases, as well as the documentation there. And so like it's a constant battle, uphill battle of keeping the service up and running and performing well. There's also recurring like memory leaks that are just coming with the versions that are shipped to us that we then try to run and operate. These are all known issues, but yeah. So without trying to defend these problems, it's obviously no easy task. We've also had bad performance or less good performance than what we would have expected. We've had request times, median request times, ranging from rather acceptable 100 milliseconds to over a second and worse. and just high operational costs and infrastructure costs for all of these aforementioned reasons. There were also, however, security concerns, and we have also already paid out a number of security, for a number of bug bounties related to the IPFS setup. And in addition, just adding to these problems, poor observability, and all of these combined obviously led to like lack of confidence and yeah, I'm hearing some, right. So yeah,
Sorry,
lack
I've
of
just
confidence.
muted.
Yes, thank you very much. So lack of confidence because of the instability, of course, but also because of the recurring issues. And so what have we done now? The precursor, I've mentioned this a little bit already at the beginning. So the IPFS setup, the one we've been offering since the start, is a combination of an IPFS gateway and a 𝗨𝗏𝗂𝗶𝗀 layer. So 𝗨𝗏𝗂𝗶𝗀 is actually basically a write layer to an IPFS gateway. This is more like an admin resource that is not supposed to be exposed to the internet, certainly not publicly. It's mostly for writing and uploading files, basically pinning files, but also administrative operations on an IPFS node. Then we have the IPFS gateway. This is mostly for reading files, so reading documents from an IPFS node at a certain CID. And we have been exposing both of these. And in order to somewhat secure the IPFS node, we have locked down the 𝗨𝗏𝗂𝗶𝗀 resource just to those that are relevant for subgraph file uploads. So there's, for instance, the add API v0 add route, API v0 cat, so for reading, and API v0 pin routes for pinning files to the IPFS node. What we have done is we have created we've created an emulated IPFS gateway and 𝗨𝗏𝗂𝗶𝗀 server through Cloudflare workers. So we're emulating those methods and their request formats in Cloudflare and routing requests to Pinata behind the scenes. This means that now the IPFS, the headache-inducing IPFS operation rests with Pinata. They are experts in managing this kind of infrastructure. And we are providing reverse proxy layer, a smart reverse proxy layer around Pinata with aggressive caching and firewalls and protective measures just to make sure that these requests are handled securely and as efficient as possible. And since we've rolled this out 3 weeks ago, we are currently seeing roughly 30 to 50 million requests per day. We have about 10 millisecond median request duration, down from 500 plus, right? So as I've mentioned earlier, 500 is rather low number here compared to the worst request durations we have seen. Like they range from like 1 to 5 seconds even. And we are serving the majority of the requests from cache, from the global edge cache network that Cloudflare offers out of the box. And so far, we have had 100% uptime with this new infrastructure. In addition, we have much better observability, of course. We can make much more sense of the requests and the request patterns we are seeing on the IPFS gate. We have already identified a bunch of subgraph inefficiencies as a result of this. So there's, for instance, a plethora of subgraphs that are abusing, I would say, the file data source pattern for essentially scraping IPFS and doing millions of requests to non-existent IPFS CIDs. And we'll tackle those next. So now that this was arguably successful, what's next? We would like, and this is actually what Theo is here for today, talk about the QoS Oracle and potentially figure out how we can approach this as our next target for overhauling with the intent of creating a more production-grade, resilient and resistant system. But that's for Theo to discuss with you all later. That's it. That's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You did get a couple of questions coming through in the chat, and some congratulations there. Matthew's just congratulating you guys for the work that you guys have done, which is great. The first question is from Hao, and I think you mentioned this, but it's always good to just double check and confirm. He's asking, are there any due dates / expiry / deprecation? Are there any dates for the deprecation of the legacy IPFS URL? And I believe you
Not
did say
yet.
there's yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But just
So
double check.
the thing is, the way that we have implemented the routing there is through Cloudflare routing rules, essentially, which keeps this rather efficient. So the Cloudflare worker actually only handles valid requests, but we are, before the requests actually hit the worker, we reroute them through Cloudflare's infrastructure. And that means that the request deduplication already happens before the worker is invoked, but it means it's happening after the requests come through the global edge caching network. And so it's actually, it would be beneficial for efficiency of this deployment if as many requests as possible could reach the canonical worker URL from scratch, like directly targeting IPFS thegraph.com. Because then even more requests would be served from the global edge caching network. But it's not the end of the world for us to actually keep this legacy routing active for the foreseeable future. We do want to eventually deprecate it. No dates yet, though. If you run into any issues, by the way, with this, or there's any legacy routes that you run across that are not serviced by this routing, let us know. There was one case for that, like right after we've launched this. But yeah.
Amazing, yeah. Either direct those to Seb or just mention them in the support segment of every IOH, and we can route that to Seb and the team to get it sorted. Yeah, so Hal's just saying thank you for that response there. Seb, appreciate the going into detail and answering the question adequately. Jim has asked, what's that stat, MTTR improvement? I believe there's a stat that you had perhaps on your screen there that he's referring to. Does that give you some clarity on what stat he's referring to, or would you
MTTR?
Yeah, maybe Jim, you can elaborate if you are on the mic or in the chat.
I just missed Seb. I just missed the like headline improvement in response time, for returning queries from IPFS.
Yeah. So actually, people should notice this when they deploy subgraphs now. So because uploads are also much faster, right? And uploads also because we are caching, we are detecting CID duplications when you upload already when all of the bytes have come through to the worker, like we immediately check, like we generate the CID also in the worker and immediately determine, oh, this CID already exists, it's in cache. And then like for subgraphs that are being redeployed with maybe just some small changes, you should see drastic improvement in upload performance. But I've not tracked actually the performance improvements there. It's noticeable. For retrieving CIDs from IPFS, the median response time went down from 500 milliseconds to 10 milliseconds.
Wow. Okay. Impressive. The other thing I wanted to ask, or just something I was thinking about, was back in the day, in the earlier days, there was this notion that the IPFS service would eventually be the responsibility of the indexers. But just listening to you talk about the type of infrastructure you're using in order to achieve the scale that's required, then that's clearly not something we can do with IPFS today.
Yeah.
So I guess my question would be twofold. One, sounds like this is now a long-term requirement for the protocol. So with that comes the need for stewards and funding and things like that. And then also the other thing that was on my mind was, maybe you want to talk about it, maybe you don't, but is IPFS, does it continue to be the right solution for all of these objectives?
Great question. So we redid all of this, and we could have just said IPFS. Why are we even bothering? Let's just create a bespoke REST API for uploads and file retrieval, right? Why that would have just done the job just as well, right? However, so there's obviously still clearly a belief that a decentralized infrastructure stack is the right path, right? And so whilst we offer this service out of convenience, we want to remain compatible with the interfaces that IPFS provides for this, which is why we have chosen to create this emulated IPFS gateway and 𝗂𝗲 𝗟𝗶𝗀 combination instead of just rolling a bespoke solution. This means that GraphNode continues to assume that there is an IPFS registry, and that there is and a graph tooling, so the CLI for subgraph uploads and so on, also continues to assume that there is an IPFS node. They think when they interact with these endpoints that they are actually legitimately talking to an IPFS node, and that was kind of like our bar that we wanted to meet, right? Without breaking any of the decentralization promises of the architecture, to also serve the desired stability and performance bar that we want to achieve there, right? So if someone wants to still host an actual IPFS node directly, or maybe run this with their own IPFS node, they can, and this future is still possible. And it's not even the future. You could already do this today, right? You can point your graph node at your own IPFS node. You can point graph CLI at your own IPFS node, right? And use that. But we offer this, and we continue to offer this for convenience, and to do this efficiently, we had to just upgrade our infrastructure there.
That's really interesting. Thank you for the insight.
Amazing. We've got Vincent typing in the chat there, so I'm assuming there's another question coming through. Oh, no longer typing. Keep the questions coming. This is great, guys. And Seb, if you want to add any more context to keep the conversation going, feel free to as well. Any more questions, folks? Vince is typing again. Okay, so we'll let Vince type, and we'll try and get that addressed in the chat. In the meantime, yeah, if anyone has any questions, just feel free to type in the chat, and we'll get those addressed. We will swiftly move on to Theo now, who's also joining us today. Oh, let's see. Vincent says, we'd like to run our own IPFS node, but in the past we've had issues with not being able to get subgraph manifest. We'd like to figure out peering. We'd like to figure out peering to successfully run our own node. Interesting. Okay.
If you are interested in running your own IPFS node, if this is something you want to do, do some soul searching first of all, if you really want to do it. But if you really want to do it, then peering is an option, and we do Pinata offers peering, and if you're interested, I can hook you up with the resources to peer with.
There you go. You've got some soul searching on the cards there. But if despite that soul searching, you still have the desire, it seems like you've there's a path there. Okay, wonderful. 0 stars, do not recommend. Lol. That's funny. Okay, well, now I'm going to swiftly hand over to Theo, who's going to be taking us through some of the work that he does at EdgeNode and talking to us about the QoS subgraph. So without further ado, feel free to take the mic, Theo.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, first off, I'll just introduce myself for those who do not know me. My name's Theo. I've been at EdgeNode for about 4 years now as a software developer, and for much of that time, I've been the primary maintainer of the EdgeNode gateways and related systems. So yeah, today, what brings me here is to talk about the quality of service Oracle. As Sebastian mentioned, this is sort of our next planned point of focus for improving the general reliability of systems that we rely upon. Obviously, quality of service Oracle is a little bit less core to the system than IPFS, but it is pretty clear that it is something that indexers do like to use for a variety of reasons. I'm actually here mostly to get some feedback on how exactly it's being used by indexers to make sure that the things we do to improve this situation actually still continue to fill those needs. So yeah, for some additional context on the quality of service Oracle, this is mostly providing a, pretty much entirely is providing a subgraph that allows indexers to see quality of service metrics that are recorded by the gateways related to indexer performance on particular allocations. So the current implementation, frankly, was never really set up for real-world use and is largely, as a consequence, unreliable for a variety of reasons, some of which being flaky pipelines that are sort of feeding the subgraph, and also the subgraph being itself quite difficult to index, partially due to details related to IPFS, which has now been somewhat resolved, but also just the nature of how it actually puts out data in a way that is retained for indefinite amount of time, makes it particularly difficult to index. So anyway, I'd sort of like to open the floor a bit, ideally, to gather some feedback on how exactly does this get used for a little bit of I'll sort of kick it off by saying my understanding as of right now is that this is used primarily by indexers to inspect their own performance or the performance of other indexers on deployments that they are seeing, and sort of using that to infer why gateways may or may not be selecting those indexers on a particular subgraph deployment. So specifically, the things I'd like to know about or hone in on, but of course I'm happy to hear general use cases, is if there is a need for historical retention of data, and also what window of aggregations is suitable. I believe the current quality of service for Oracle, if I remember correctly, goes down to a granularity of about 10 minutes, but I think it may also just provide all the data points, which is crazy. And then provides 5 minutes. Wow. Yeah. So in an ideal world, obviously in my head, or from a practical perspective, it is ideal for us to both have very minimal historical retention and very aggressive, say hourly aggregations. But obviously, I don't want to just go ahead and do that if that doesn't really fulfill the needs of indexers. So yeah, I'll open up the floor now to anyone who has some context on how they use this service as it exists.
I've pasted hi Theo, it's Jim. I've pasted a screenshot from Indexer Tools into the chat if you can see that.
Yes, thank you very much. I was muted because I was literally saving the screenshot.
Yeah, so I don't know how many people use this today, but it's a really powerful tool for somebody who's not really that advanced when it comes to building my own queries. This is a really excellent, powerful tool that you can use out the box from Vincent at Data Nexus. And there's some very basic use cases here. The first question that an indexer is asking when they're sitting with no information about their performance is, how am I performing? The first place they'll go to is likely a set of Grafana dashboards that they've pulled from 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗧𝗂 or from the GraphNode repo, or they've got from Discord that will show them a bit about their QPS from the metrics, the metrics endpoint on their graph nodes. And that will give them some idea of the volume that they're getting. What it won't tell them is the true QPS, right? Because they're seeing raw QPS, and I guess the number that you see can be one query coming from the gateway could be an amalgamation of a number of queries. So you start to think to yourself, well, what am I really doing on that subgraph? So the next place you'll go looking is maybe you might look at the Explorer. You'll look at maybe GraphSeer, and both of those have some information on them. GraphSeer has quite a lot of indexer-centric data on it. So that's another place that the indexers will go for the same information. So we're trying to answer the question, how am I performing? So that's to start off with. Am I actually serving queries, and am I making some GRT from it? And then the next obvious question when you're looking at your, we're watching our query numbers every day as indexers, and we see the peaks and troughs, and we think to ourselves, oh, why are we making 10% of what we were making yesterday? What's the problem there? So you're starting to think to yourself, how am I performing against all the other indexers? And that can be in the form of a summary, like I've shown you here, which is just like a summary of all the subgraphs I've been serving for the last 24 hours, I think, and how many queries I've done on them and what the performance has been like. So the types of things you want to be looking at is, on a per subgraph basis, who's serving the most queries, what's their performance. So you'd be looking at things like how close they are to the chain head, min and max latency, all of those little things that we think that, or we know from looking at the code, are important to the gateway to try and claim some or more of the queries or the business demand that there is on that subgraph. That's as much as I use it for. I think there might be a lot more there. I'm really interested to hear what Marc-Andre has to say about it, if he's here today. Is he here today? No, maybe not. Because I think he's quite a prolific user. And if there's anyone else who's a prolific user, I'd be really keen to hear what they're doing as well. But that Theo is a very basic case. And I don't think I don't know how much stuff is in that Oracle, I'll be honest. But that's the basis of what I need. And I only really need it, for me, I would say, on a daily basis. It's no lower resolution than that at this point. And I think, when you act on that data, if you have that data, you can find ways to get an edge, or at least bring yourself up to the performance of other indexers.
Nice. Thank you so much for that context. Also, one thing I forgot to mention earlier that is sort of like an improvement that will come along with these, an improvement that will come along with these improvements is that I know I've heard from some indexers who are like talking to me about the indexer selection algorithm in particular. There is a bit of a cumbersome aspect of this quality of service Oracle as it was originally implemented, which is that it provides you a metric for blocks behind chainhead, which is not on its own particularly useful, at least not directly, because that's really, it's sort of an outdated metric, because obviously the gateway, back when it only supported Ethereum, that was a useful thing. But of course, different chain, like being 100 blocks behind on Ethereum is very different from being 100 blocks behind on something like Arbitrum, right? So this is sort of a minor improvement, but it is, I think, a very, practically speaking, it's actually quite useful for anyone actually trying to interpret indexer selection behavior, is that you will actually instead get a metric for like seconds behind, which is what the gateway actually uses. So that's just a minor point. But anyway, yeah, I will definitely try to reach out to Marc-Andre, because it seems he's a pretty big user of this thing, just to make sure his needs also line up with what I've heard here. And yeah, realistically, as far as like the windows of time, the use cases for per day, 30-day, and data points does line up with what I would want. My general sort of assumption coming into this would be that we want to have a retention of, like, say, 30 days. So you'd be able to have like a 30-day aggregation, a day, like a daily aggregation and an hourly aggregation, because I personally think that an hourly aggregation would be useful for anyone trying to do some pretty granular monitoring of their, selection behavior. But that's, yet to be seen. Obviously, more granular is nice, but we'll almost certainly at least be having like a granularity of and a retention of 30 days. That seems consistent with what I'd like to see. just gonna quickly scan through the chat to see if there's any other discussion on this that can influence our plans here.
Jim's just saying, is it possible to make data by gateway/geo available?
Oh, you mean like the geographic location of the gateway? Yeah, that that definitely would be useful. It does definitely complicate thing. I'm gonna write it down as something that there's interest in. Realistically, it may not be part of like the initial set of improvements that we make, but I might be wrong. I'll try to get that in. Just because that, as opposed to the other changes, that might require sort of deeper reworking.
Yeah, I mean, indexers can do that themselves to some degree, right? So you can analyze your proxy logs and whatever. I was doing it the other day, actually. But to have that integrated with the performance data would be very, very, as a sort of like something on the wish list, of course, Theo.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
Not an absolute need. It would be very valuable, though.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, hourly granularity. Yeah, that's sort of lines up with my expectations. Obviously, 5-minute is hard to manage because just because that's a lot of data. But yeah, hourly seems like to me like a decent middle ground for the minimum granularity. Oh, yes, and a detail for especially for anyone who's like following like horizon changes and like changes related to the lifetimes of allocations and how that like is moving forward. The just for like future compatibility, I suspect that um, the this data will likely be keyed based on like an indexer and a deployment pair, not necessarily an allocation. Obviously, an allocation could be like thought of as being very similar but slightly distinct from the actual pair of like an indexer and for a particular deployment. So just to sort of iron out any like future like allocation lifetime weirdness, or also weirdness that comes from indexers having obviously different allocations in a particular deployment, et cetera, just to smooth all those things out. It's like the new sources data probably won't even like talk about allocations. I'm mostly just bringing that up in case that's relevant for anybody. Like if anyone has like specific tooling that like tries to look data up by allocation, but even though to me it would seem much easier from like an indexer's perspective to just think about their own indexer address and then the deployment that they actually care about. Just bringing that up as a point, just in case there's something I haven't considered there.
There's a couple of things in the chat here in relation to some of the stuff you're saying. People just sharing a bit more about the ways that they do things.
Okay, yeah, I do see a point about being able to search by epoch. That's good to know. Yeah, I suspect that like I might try to line up like the per day data points with epochs, but yeah, I'm writing that down in my notes to keep track of that epoch. Being able to track things by epoch is a desired feature for this.
And then I'm not sure if you've seen this, but Sergey from P2P is saying we're pulling raw data and aggregating the data ourselves. So if it's going to be possible to keep that, we'd prefer that.
Absolutely.
Nice. Let's see what else people are saying in the chat. And then as I'm scrolling through the chat, if anyone has any additional comments, thoughts, like please do shout, because we have Theo right here who's taking all of the feedback now and going to incorporate that into some updates to improve the QoS subgraph. So yeah, far away, guys. Would love to hear people's thoughts. Yeah, it's a shame Marc-Andre isn't here. He's usually here most weeks. But he, yeah, is a big user apparently and quite vocal. So hopefully today's a holiday. Oh, okay.
No worries. I'll
Holiday.
reach out to him directly, given that he's a big user of this.
Yeah, definitely worth reaching out for sure. Any more questions, thoughts on this? I see Jim is typing. He builds the tools that a lot of other indexes use. That's correct. Yeah. He's a pretty important part of the graph community. Yeah. It's a holiday in Canada. Okay. Is he based in Canada? I thought he was based elsewhere.
Yeah, I believe he is.
Oh, okay. Cool. Makes sense. Got it. Any more questions, thoughts? As I said, we've got Theo here, and Seb from the Edge team, and Mickey. So yeah, would love to make sure we get all thoughts on this directed towards the Edge team. See Gemma's typing. Ah, very cool. I did not know this. 𝗨𝗀𝗂𝗃𝗀 Day. Very cool. Thank you. Being able to easily see QM hash, number of queries, query fees for any particular indexer, e.g. myself, would be helpful. That's another piece of feedback there, Theo.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah. This will definitely include like the obviously, like, the data points will include things like the indexer address, the like deployment QM hash, the count of successful queries, the count of failed queries, which obviously you can then get to a success rate. And then like the as well as like data points that are relevant for the actual like indexer selection process. So things like obviously success rate, which I already mentioned, the latency, like average latencies, as well as can't believe I'm blanking on this. Oh, right, seconds behind chain head, which is a big one, of course.
And question here, what's the timeline for all of these changes? Like right now, it sounds like what you're doing is you're collating a bunch of feedback, and then I'm assuming you're going to roll those up into things to work on and then crack on. What's the timeline for all of this?
Currently, I'm probably I'm a true software developer in the sense that I am very hesitant to provide any timelines whatsoever. But this is definitely like a relative focus for us now that we've sort of tackled the IPFS stuff. The actual timeline is it's gonna sort of fall out of this sort of like initial information gathering to see what based on like what we currently have, what work has already been done by GraphOps to sort of improve this situation, as well as changes that we can actually make internally within EdgeNode for our like Kafka-based like inter-gateway infrastructure stuff. What our options are and how expediently we can get significant improvements out of this.
Got it. How much are you speaking with the GraphOps team on this? Because I know that there's some work being done on this.
We definitely worked with GraphOps on this so far as like general a combined effort amongst like gateway maintainers and operators to sort of improve the situation, since the quality of service Oracle as it currently exists is something that only realistically could be run by EduNode, and even then it's pretty, as I've described, is pretty like flaky, and we would never like recommend other gateway operators trying to do it in the same way, which is part of the desire to actually make something that's much more streamlined and practical to actually like deliver and maintain.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. Any additional thoughts, things to share with Theo as it relates to the QoS subgraph? It'd be great to hear people's thoughts. And then I also want to throw in every time we I mean we kind of spoke about this last week and the week before. We do want to make sure that everyone's questions are answered, or if they have any challenges, at least to know that there's someone working on that and trying to get that sorted. So I also want to open up and say, if you have like a support segment in IOH, and I want to make sure that everyone's thoughts are being addressed. So like yeah, any broader things people are facing at the moment that maybe they need help with. I just answered a question in substreams with soon to yeah. That's the famous. I mean, it's, yeah. Wise not to box yourself in with specific dates. Makes sense. But yeah, any sort of general challenges people are facing that they want to share with we've got Mickey in here, and is Mitch still here? Mitch. Oh yeah, Mitch is here as well. Mickey and Mitch from support. So if anyone has any challenges, then let's get those flagged up, and then we'll try and follow up with those. See a few people typing. Yeah, and also any sort of feedback or thoughts on QoS subgraph would be amazing too. See Mickey's typing. Okay, so closing the loop on this, which is the question around does GraphNode check for things like this, which is what Matthew asked earlier in relation to Vince's comment. Chatted with Lutter just now, and he said no, it doesn't currently. Do sanity checks like this? No, sorry, I'm misreading this. So chatted with Lutter just now, and he said no, it doesn't currently do sanity checks like this. We'll evaluate if this could be added in a feature as a feature. Jesus Christ, I can't read. We'll evaluate if this could be added to a future sprint potentially. Cool. Well, that's amazing to see that within the core a loop was closed there. And it sounds like there's been efforts made. There's going to be some effort made to get that potentially put into GraphNode. Okay, well, if there aren't any additional thoughts on the QoS subgraph. When autographing, yes, that was something that was brought up last week. Any additional context there, Mickey or Mitch, on this? Because yeah, I do remember seeing that in the on the whiteboard. I can't remember what the status was at on that. I see Mickey's typing. Okay, so it sounds like this was been spoken about internally from Mickey, and she's going to get to an answer there. Okay, well, if anyone has any additional thoughts in relation to QoS subgraph Oracle, fire away, or general support, fire away. Otherwise, I will take the opportunity to say thank you to everyone who got involved today: Seb, Theo, Mickey, everyone for having Mitch for hopping in, and all of you for talking in the chat and getting the conversation going. I'm glad we got to get things resolved in today's conversation. Okay, well, we look forward to seeing you guys again same time next week for another edition of Index Office Hours. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.